in the book, this is not the actual book, this is a sample book. I literally died on purpose, God's purpose. First chapter, not having a choice in how we get here, who we're born to, who gets to be our siblings. That's all in God's hands. And we make the best of it. And what I realized is my parents were young. My dad had, finished college and, working. And I remember him, now I can start to have some memories of real life stuff that happened. I just was telling you how I felt emotionally. So we have to be careful of how we go about life, and especially when we're parents. Certain things you just don't say to a child, and we know that, just like I said about my parents' friends, saying stuff like she's a pretty little black girl. That impact lasted um, for a lifetime. Now I do think I'm a pretty person. Beauty's in the eye of the beholder, so some people might say somebody else is pretty or what. I don't care. I love me. And when I look in the mirror, I'm happy with me and where I am. But as a child, this is the story that I'm telling, because chapter 1 talks about where you are in your family. And you should encourage your child the best way you can. My youngest daughter said to me, Mama, you told me that I was okay and everything, and I was fat. And I said, baby, that was my job to encourage you. That was what I had to do. And I wish someone would have done that for me. But see, a lot of times as parents, we're not given the tools. And we love our children and we want the best for them. But a lot of the parents back then had issues that they never dealt with. Just like I had issues that I never dealt with when I had my children. So I'm not, putting the blame on anybody. But this is the story of Tonja and how I felt back then. But I remember, my mom had to go to work sometimes early in the morning, and my dad happened to do my hair, and my mom would have me like two plaits and one in the back, and he just brush over it and put it together. Excuse me. Make sure I got to school and look decent. I appreciate that. You know, that unity that they had to make sure we had what we needed was there. My parents had friends. They would, come over to the house. I don't remember a lot, but I do remember my parents doing the best they could. Now, my mama, she would make sure Easter, Christmas, whatever it was, that our hair was fried, dyed, and laid to the side. I do remember that because I would have burnt marks either on my forehead or on my ear, because she'd be on the phone talking. They had those either those rotary phones or the ones that you press the buttons, and then you put the phone to your ear, and it's got this long cord, and she would just be talking and and then hold your head still. That was hilarious now that I think about it, because my kids told me I did the same thing. But that's just a part of life. I looked at the value that they brought to our family, especially as a black family back in the 60s. Blacks marriage was strong in black communities. Um, and I don't want to digress. I want to try to stay on how I felt. But black families, that was something you saw all the time. They would have their friends come over as couples, and they would have get-togethers and things of that nature. And I remember our parents letting us be there. Like I said in the book, I tasted, some alcohol at the age of 6 and decided I never wanted to do that again. And I thank him for that, because that was a nasty taste, and it smells nasty, but some people like it. I don't. But then, going through all the stages with my parents and feeling the way I did, my hair getting, but we weren't deprived of anything. We had what we needed. My dad made sure we had the lunch money. My mom, every day my dad would come home faithfully at 5 o'clock, and we would sit at the table. Dinner would be prepared. We had a routine as a family. Saturdays, my dad didn't let us sleep in. We had to get up and do our chores, and then we can go lay back down if we wanted to or go outside and play. But he was teaching us discipline. He was teaching us to make sure that our priorities were straight. And that part I do appreciate, because I know that my brother, God bless his soul, he's gone now, but he worked summer jobs and nobody told him he had to, but my dad put that work ethic in us. Now, my mom stopped working when I was like in the seventh grade. So, sixth or seventh grade. And but she was a nurse and she stopped. Um, but they made that decision amongst themselves. He said she never had to work if she didn't want to, that he would provide and he would take care of her. And that's the way they did it. So when she decided she didn't want to work any longer, she didn't work. Um, so all of that, we had family vacation every summer for 2 weeks. We would basically go visit relatives. Back in the 60s and the 70s, families stayed in touch. They went to, visit family members in other states. And later on, we ended up having family reunions, kind of getting together. And so everybody would stay in touch that way. But they did the best they could with what they had. Society gave us the impression, gave me the impression that this is the way it had to be. And I fell for it. And so, because of that, society will dictate a lot of what we feel. And so, I just remember feeling loved by what I considered some of the people that my family said were the meanest ones. They loved me, but I ended up being mean because of that. But that meanness came from hurt. That meanness came from not wanting anybody to get close enough to know how I felt. Now, some of the memories, I can't tell it all. I don't know why. I can't remember. And I know one of the things that, I hear people saying all the time, that when they were young, they knew what they wanted to be when they grew up. The girls would talk about getting married and have their big wedding and the house with a white picket fence. I never, ever thought of that. I never knew what I wanted to be. I went to college. In the first 2 years, general ed, so it's not a big deal. But I didn't even know what I wanted to do as a profession. I never had that thought of getting married and having a white picket fence. And for whatever reason, that got suppressed in the memories of the things that I went through and that I endured. Do I remember every last thing? Absolutely not. But I remember feeling like I'm not worthy. I'm not supposed to be here. This is not, I felt ugly. I felt just like life was not fair. And this is me, hindsight is 2020. This is me looking back at why I did the things that I did. I tried to be friends with people. And one of my friends, actually, she's a good person. She's married, and I was trying to be her friend when we were in elementary school, because I remember my granddad used to come down from Ohio, and we switched elementary schools quite often. And when my granddad would come down, my dad and them switched schools, so we'd go to school with my cousins, and my granddad would come and he would take us to school every day. Now this is, what I remember. And he'd give us $5 and don't tell nobody. He want us to tell our parents, and we used to go buy a bunch of junk. Oh, I ain't got no teeth now. But I'm here. So I have more happy memories than I do sad. The sadness just came from me not knowing who I was and knowing my worth. But my parents didn't get what they didn't give us. So how can I expect it from them? And so life goes on and we go through a myriad of things through life, but we have to learn how to read and evaluate why this happened and how to come out of it. Now, my mom is the one who gave her life to the Lord first and caused my dad to get saved. But in between all of that, and even in the middle of them getting saved, it was a lot of unpleasant moments because they were still trying to figure it out. But I just remember the times when my grandfather would come down and, like I said, give us the money, give us rides, and we would have family reunions. And if somebody passed away, we all get in the car, all the family members would drive. I remember my first time, I think I was in the fourth grade. We went because my great grandmother passed away. And I was like in the fourth grade, and we all went up to Georgia. And I remember seeing snow, things like that you remember, and we would go visit my mother's people in Detroit, Michigan, and Lansing, Michigan. And I would stay with my Aunt Eunice. And my Aunt Eunice adored me, and I would be the only one to go stay with her. Like I said, she adored me, but they said she was mean. I don't know. I don't even remember it. I just know that I did. I stayed with her. And my point is, this is Tonja's story. And every day I'm going to be talking about how I grew up, anything that I can think of, because some things I don't think of until I get to talking. So just be encouraged. If you've gone through a lot of stuff and you still haven't forgiven yourself and you still haven't forgiven your parents, please do. Life is short. And if your parents passed away, forgive them anyway. It's a hard job as a parent. And I don't fault them for anything they did. They gave us the best with what they had. So know that when life be lifing, Christ be Christing. That's my 2 cents for change. Until tomorrow, be blessed and have a good one.